Hello, hello, hello. It is Tuesday and it is approximately 5:30. And that's all I'm really aiming at. I'm aiming at the ballpark. It is approximately 5:30 and that means it's time for Take Charge Tuesday. I am excited to hang out with you today and to talk about data because I'm a bit of a data nerd. It's really interesting because I used to run my business by the seat of my pants and and I used to do almost all of my marketing by the seat of my pants. And then over time, I started to really acknowledge what data could do and what I could get from it and what kind of results I could get from it. Matter of fact, I know y'all are probably tired of hearing it, but that is part of the reason. Hey, that's part of the reason why I named the business predictable results marketing was because, man, you can really get some predictable results when you start looking at your data and you start developing the ability to read insights into your data. And so today I want to talk about the data itself, what data you should be gathering, what kind of questions you should be asking. And then we can talk next week because next Take Charge Tuesday is kind of an extension or a part two to this one, where we will talk all about how to get insights and then how to let those insights turn your data into some magic for you because none of this matters if you are collecting data and you can't do anything with it, which I would suppose is the number one reason why people don't do it. Like they don't collect data because they feel like it's worthless. And like I just have all this information and I can't do anything with it. So I will refer back to what I think is one of my favorite quotes. I gave you guys the Seneca quote last week, and this one is from Niall Fitzgerald. Who I think is the ex-CEO of some fancy company like Unilever, and and he is purported, I'm sure other people have said the similar things, but that data makes your briefcase heavy and insights make you rich. And I think that the only flaw in that quote is that it does not like directly tie the two together. And I think that for some people there's just not enough of that tie, and so they feel like, what's the point of gathering all this data, what's the point of doing all this work of knowing this information if there isn't anything I can do with it. And so what we're going to talk about in this kind of 2 week scenario that we're going to have here, where I do Take Charge Tuesday on data this week and then Take Charge Tuesday on insights next week, is we're going to talk about the what you should be accumulating and kind of the why, and then the insights that you can gather from that. And I will, as a testimonial for you, just in case you were wondering, in my own business personally, I started really taking data seriously in my business probably 3 years ago. And I started taking it seriously in my own business because I had been taking it so seriously for my customers. And I had been paying a lot of attention to their analytics. I had been paying a lot of attention to their reporting. And as a function of that, we were able to make really legitimate adjustments based on what we were seeing that was actually leading to some really sustainable outcomes, things that we could repeat over and over and over again. And as like just having that happen, having that success kind of coming at you with, collecting the data, reading the data, understanding what it's saying, and then having good outcomes, all of that together really made me kind of go all in on data. So, what am I talking about when I talk about data? There are, of course, the data on your website, but there's also the data that's coming from your social media and the data that's coming from your email. I personally believe in gathering as much of that data into Google Analytics as you can, mostly because then it gives you one place to kind of have a framework. And if you want to get super nerdy with it, then you can use something like Google Data Studio in order to visualize your social media data, your email data, and your website data all in one place. So there are some, and Google Data Studio is free. So this is not like an ad for anything. So if you want to use something like that to help you visualize all these things together, that is one really good place to start. But I'm just going to talk about the stuff you can get off of your website, because even if you get email metrics. So let's say you are, gathering email data, you're gathering email metrics, they all stop at your website. And so if you really want to gain insights from your email, then you need to be tracking your email through to your website if that's where you're sending people, which if you want to make money, that's probably where you're sending people. So if you're sending them to your website from your email, then you need to be tracking from your email to your website. If you're using social media, of course, social media can be used for brand awareness, but once someone is aware of your brand, what is it that you want them to be doing? Whatever in the internet you want them to be doing, pretty much you can track it using Google Analytics. So if that's coming to your website, if that's going to a landing page, if that's going to, some downloadable thing that you have, I have a variety of things that I have people doing and I track them all. So, matter of fact, there's a link in here somewhere. So I have a workshop. Yes, let's get nerdy. I have a workshop that is happening next week after Take Charge Tuesday, all about data and analytics. And if you want to join that workshop, I have a link in the description here, and I'm going to drop it into the comments. And that link is actually being tracked via Google Analytics. So I try to track as much as I can. So not just, even if this is a social media platform that you're watching this on, we're tracking onto a link to see, what the basically what the demographics are of people who are clicking, what the click-through rates are on the links that I'm using. All of those things are information to help me figure out what my best outcomes are for the work that I'm putting into things. So like I said, let's go back to why I'm talking about that, which is to say Google Analytics is a great place for you to start gathering data. You may not be as advanced as I am, putting links all over and having all the tracking of everything, but whatever it is that you're doing on your basic website right now, you should be tracking that. You should have some sort of tracking that you're doing on your website. And I highly suggest that you use Google Analytics. It is completely free. And we love free 99, y'all. So it is free and it is way easier to use than you think. So if you've been using Google Analytics in the past and you were like bogged down by what was happening inside of the platform and there's too many options and all this other stuff, it's actually gotten a lot easier to use. This is not a soapbox about Google Analytics, so let me move on. But I do want to note for you that it is easier to use. So if you are going to kind of do any of the things we're talking about here, you'll be able to find these things pretty easily. So what can you gather data around? What are the things that you can gather data around? The first thing that you can gather data around is a basic question, which is what is happening on your website right now? And when I say what is happening on your website, I mean whatever internet property you are using to send people to do something. So that could be a landing page, it could be a downloadable, if it can be any of those things, right? So what's happening on those platforms right now? And yes, Pat, if you can't track it, you can't manage it. It's so true. It's so true. So what's happening right now? This information, the what's happening right now information, is really useful to help you to determine the immediate outcomes of a behavior. So let's say you are at a conference or a trade show. So trade show, conference, something like that, where you are handing out information and you are expecting people to do a behavior with the information that you are giving them. So hopefully you're giving people calls to action and you want to know what's happening right now. Like, are people clicking on this thing? What has been gained from it? If you are running any type of advertising that has an outcome that requires people to end up on your website or on some other type of trackable page, then you can use analytics in real time to find out if your ad is being successful, if the thing that you're doing, that social media post that you just ran, the video that you just did, whatever the thing is, you can use your analytics to track what's happening right now. So for instantaneous activities, things that are something that you want to track in this moment, you can actually use your analytics to gather that information. So what's happening right now on your site? Where are people coming from? That is the second kind of category of information that you can track or that you should be gathering data around. Where are people coming from is really, really useful because it can help you figure out where to spend your time. So we're not going to dive into insights, but that is a massive, massive little teaser there, is that if you find out where your people are coming from It can help you direct your marketing efforts. Big win, right? Okay, so first thing is what's happening right now. Second thing is where are people coming from? It may be different than you expect. I love the fact that we are in an age where you can have your intuition. You're like, I think this is what's going on. Your intuition that's kind of guiding you, but then you can use data to determine whether or not your intuition is accurate or not, instead of just using your intuition and guessing. I don't believe in guessing if you don't have to, right? So gather some data so that you can know where people are coming from and not just rely on very faulty word of mouth and memory, because for the most part, unless you are running a very high level reporting program where like you're asking people in multiple ways on different platforms where they found you, it is very unlikely that you will ever know without analytics where people came from, because they don't remember. It's very interesting how people are kind of weird like that. And then how your visitors are interacting on your website and what are they engaging with. So again, if you are running a website or any other platform, it may not be your website, but you might have another type of platform, like an educational platform that you're using. You can use analytics to determine how people are engaging on that platform. So let's say you are a person who has developed a course and you are using any number of software to run your course. If you use Google Analytics on your course software, even if your course software has analytics, the analytics in your course software may only be telling you when someone is playing a video. It may not necessarily tell you what people are doing other than that. And so, depending on the software, if they have the ability for you to add in an analytics link, you can actually see what people are doing on your site, on your course site, instead of just guessing. So you may have people who are not watching your videos, but they are engaging in other bits and pieces of content. And if you have analytics, you can actually see that versus having a report that only tells you watch time or watch hours, right? So we want to be looking at all the types of engagements and interactions that are available, and kind of determining like what the insights can be. Again, not trying to get too far into insights at this point, just asking the right question, which is wherever you have information, if it's trackable, what are people doing once they get there? That's very good information for you to know, and we can definitely work that into an analytics plan. Next is what are they buying? So if you are having some sort of e-commerce being a way for people to make a purchase inside of the internet, you can actually use your e-commerce, your website, your Google Analytics to track your e-commerce. Now, there are now, because we have so many multi-purpose interactive, commerce platforms, there are so many ways that you can pull all of the data together. So if you are an in-person shop, or if you are running, if you're running an invoice-based business where maybe you're invoicing people, or there's other things that people are doing other than buying from you, you can track all the way through to a purchase from activity that they're doing on your website. And I absolutely love this. Like you can track, so many lovely things from an interaction standpoint, to help you determine why people are buying, where they're coming from when they're buying, which visitors are buying, which activities they did right before they made a purchase. Not an individual human. Don't get me wrong here. That's not what we're talking about. But you can look at trends. So you can look at the trends on how people are using your website when they are making a purchase versus how they're using your website when they're not making a purchase. These are really interesting things to examine in order to determine what to do, right? So you have to have the data though. Like you can't determine what to do with it unless you're capturing that data and you're looking at it. So why are people buying? What are they buying? What are they doing around purchasing? You can gather that information using your analytics. You can also look at the frequency of their engagement. So if you have a business where you need people to return to your website or to return to any, again, of those digital properties that you have out there, website, landing pages, ebooks, whatever it is you have, you can look at the frequency of activity. Meaning, how long is someone staying on your website? How many times are people visiting on a regular basis? How many people who are visiting your website are returning visitors versus non-returning visitors? How many people are returning 3 or 4 times? Like you can actually set up an alert for yourself to let you know when people are visiting your website 6, 7, 8 times. That is all really good information to know because it can help you determine what to do, which is that whole insights into action thing that we're going to talk about next week. But you cannot, no, you can't make that transition into doing anything if you're not gathering that initial data on what are they doing in the first place? What is the frequency of their return? What kind of engagements are they doing and how often are they doing them? So these are things that you want to be looking at in your analytics or gathering data on. Let's not even look at it yet. Just gather the data, right? And then lastly, who are these people? So again, we're not talking about an individual human. So I'm not like going to be able to look at my website and say, that was Pat Bennett who was on my website. Now, those of you who are savvy might be watching this and going, yes, you can. And you are right, but not using the software that I'm talking about. And we're getting to the point where the ability to do that kind of granular determination of like who exactly is on your website at any given point in time, we are probably moving away from a data era where that is possible. So you shouldn't rely on like I said, super granular data like Pat Bennett's on my website right now kind of data, because it really does blur way too many lines. But with a data gathering, meaning that you're not looking at one specific person's activity, but you're looking at activity in general, which is really where you get that heavy briefcase that gives you lots of information. You don't really want just one person's information. You want a bunch of information so that you can know in general what to do instead of just trying to decide what to do with Pat at this moment. You can figure out what to do with an entire category of people who look like Pat, who behave like Pat, who are visitors who are like Pat. So you have the ability to ask that question of your analytics and to gather data that is going to help you to determine who is visiting your website. What are their motivations? What are they shopping for in general? Not just specifically on your website, but what are they in the market for right now? What kind of interests do they have? Where are they located in the world? Are the majority of the people who are coming to your website located here in Northeast Ohio? Are they located in Ohio in general? Are they located in North Carolina? Wherever it is, if you're gathering the data, then when you review it, you will be able to determine, oh, wow, I have the majority of my visitors are here. I will say that, again, as small business owners, we have a tendency to do one of two things. We either think that everyone who visits our website is someone we know, like obviously no one who doesn't know me is visiting my website, which is not true. Or we think that everyone on the planet Earth is visiting our website, and that, and that's also not true. There are definitely trends. There are groups of people, subsets of humanity that are visiting your website. And what your analytics can give you is something to kind of knock off either of those kind of intuition-y sort of statements like, oh, well, anybody can buy my stuff and everybody is my customer sort of behavior, to, oh, nobody but my mom would visit my website or whatever the thing is that you're kind of telling yourself. Good or bad, it doesn't matter. Data overrides it, right? So data can give you way more information than just a single, like my mom told me that she saw my website and she thinks that this is happening. Well, your mom could be right or she could be wrong. I don't know. Data will help you determine that, though, instead of you just taking the word of a single person. Like, we are not about that single person, single data point, single human as the entire decision-making process. Now, before I move forward to let you know what kind of reports you should be looking at in order to gather the data that I'm talking about right now, I do want to talk about that single person, single data aspect. If you are like the majority of people who I work with, a solopreneur who is, and when I say solopreneur, I don't mean that you don't have people on your team, but a solopreneur usually means someone who is running their business mostly by themselves with some contractors and, maybe a couple part-time employees or some interns or something like that. Like, that might be you. If that's you, or even if you have a super tiny team of 3 or whatever, you still fall into this category. The category of 1, meaning that You are the final decision maker. And I mean, hey, technically, so is like Steve Ballmer. Like, there are people out there who end up being the final decision maker, even in multinational corporations. Like Richard Branson, I'm sure, is still making decisions. But he's got a board of directors that he has to be accountable to. And the rest of us are out here and ain't no board of directors telling us nothing. We get to choose in the end what we want to do, what we're not going to do, and all that good stuff. Data helps you not be alone. So if you are constantly trying to make choices, but you don't know like what to do, a lot of times the data has the answer, or at the very least, if you use the reporting or the data gathering process, you can get the answer. And I say this constantly. Someone will say to me, my ads got rejected and I don't know why. And I'm like, there is always an answer. It is never arbitrary. Or I'm being shadow banned, or this thing, like they will complain about something that is happening. And what I will always say is that there is no island. You are not alone. There is information that you can find out anytime you feel like I'm lost in a sea of nothingness. There's data all around you. And what we need to start doing is gathering the data, collecting it before we need it, so that when it is time for us to figure out why our traffic fell off a cliff, or why our sales has dried up, or why people aren't opening our emails anymore, or why our social media accounts don't seem to be working like they used to, whatever the thing is that you need to figure out the why of, the answer is in your data. You just need to know where to look. Okay. And so we're going to talk about where to look specifically inside of Google Analytics, but there's all sorts of analytics on all the other platforms, like I've mentioned. But we're going to talk about Google Analytics. So first things first, the report you're going to review is your real-time report. That's the report that tells you what's happening right now. Then the acquisition report, which is, I don't know why, a little bit my favorite. It tells you where everyone's coming from. So it tells you when people are coming from search, whether they're typing your URL directly in, if they are coming from social media, where are they coming from? Are they coming from blog posts on somebody else's website? Where are they coming from? Engagement tells you what they are doing. So that's the third report, your engagement area, your engagement section. Your monetization area is where you will learn everything about the e-commerce that is happening on your site. You have to enable these things though. Like you can't just not use Google Analytics and then want to pop in there and gain all the value if you've never set it up on your website and you haven't been setting up reports for yourself. We're going to talk about that in the workshop next week. So this is not like, you can't magic it up when you're ready for it. You need to be prepared in advance for it. So monetization is one of those magic ones that doesn't work unless you set it up right. And so you have to know that, you want to know that information. Retention is all about like who's coming back, what are they doing as far as repeat visitors, how many pages are they visiting while they're on your website, things like that. Those are bits and pieces of information you get from your retention reports. And then lastly, your demographic reports. And I like to say that for Google Analytics, your demographic report is not just demographics, it's also psychographics. So it has information about what people are in the market for right now. What are they looking at? What are their interests? What are their values? Essentially, like what do they spend a lot of time doing? What do they care about? Now, this is, again, not granular. So this is not, you're not getting this information on one person. It's going to give you trends over time. And so if you want to gather that kind of information, you need to be looking at your demographics report. That was a lot of information. Okay. I love data, as I think you may have gotten from this little conversation that we've just had here. I could talk about any number of these things quite literally all day. I won't though. This is meant to be a half-hour situation. So what I want you to do, let me grab my link that I told you I was going to put in. That link that I said is nice and trackable. If you want to come to my workshop next week, I highly encourage you to do so. I'm dropping it into the chat right now. Go ahead and register for that workshop. It is all about Google Analytics. And if you have ever been to my Google Analytics workshops or any of my other workshops, you know this. I don't play around with fluff, right? You get like a few minutes at the beginning of a workshop where I'm like, oh, hi, I want to say, and all that. And then we jump into full out screen sharing. I hop into Google Analytics and show you around. You get to see real data. You get to see real accounts. And for stuff that I can't show you for real, I use the Google dummy or the Google merchandise account so that you can actually see what data looks like, what it looks like to see this information in real life. And we will talk about the insights that you can gather from it. So, with that, I will see you all next week on next Tuesday, where we will be talking in detail about the insights that you get from data. Because, yes, the data makes your briefcase heavy, but the data itself doesn't make you rich. The thing that makes you rich is the insights you get from the data. And you only get insights if you know what you're looking for. And we're going to talk about that, like how to get the information and how to use it, how to make sure that you can actually grow your business using that data. And with that, thank you very much. Thank you for everyone who showed up live and chatted with me. I appreciate it. And for all of you who are watching in post, feel free also to comment because I want to see what you get out of this as well. Give this a thumbs up on whatever platform you're on, and I will see you next week.